Hello, friends. This is episode 5 of the Humanity Podcast, so welcome. Today we see the forever evolving product of Homo Genus, and, there's going to be no final product to any genus, but, unless the genus goes extinct, I guess there can be a final product if you want to call it that. But in the previous episodes, I've gave very, very brief descriptions on all the evolutions. I think I only spent like 5 minutes on Homo erectus, which that's just because I didn't have a lot of time. I'm actually going to take decent time on Homo Sapiens, but we're gonna go back and forth on this episode because it's going to different points and things. The last episodes I just kind of gone in chronological order as much as possible, but we originated in East Africa about 300,000 years ago, give or take like 30,000 years. A lot of people saying different things, even up to 50,000 years. But in that 300,000 year time range, but in the early days, we were much different than the ancestors prior to us. We were hunter-gatherers, we had some incredible hunting strategies, we also did I say different? I meant similar. We had incredible hunting strategies, and we lived most of our years during the Ice Age, actually, because the most recent Ice Age only ended about 11,000 years ago, and now it's warm and things. It's weird how fast an Ice Age can change, start to finish. But anyway, I think it's obvious that living in an Ice Age, you cannot get warm, and it's very hard to live, and that's why we have evolution. But anyway, we see what was needed just to live then with a man called Otzi the Iceman. And if you don't know who Otzi the Iceman is, or Otzi, there's multiple ways of saying his name, I think. I don't know which one is right. But he was a man living about 5,000 years ago, and I know that's pretty recent for what we're talking about. I mean, civilization and farming, and even in the Americas, was about 8,000 years ago, and I think in Europe it was even earlier. I forget where Otzi the Iceman was found, but he was used as very scientific material. He was used heavily to understand our lives 5,000 years ago. Anyway, we had to wear an ungodly amount of pounds of clothing just to stay somewhat warm. I'm sure he was still cold because his shoes were made out of branches and grass, and that can't keep your toes very warm, so that you already have a risk of frostbite taking off your toes. But it's whatever, man. He was surviving. He was about 46 too, which is pretty impressive for that time. Well, we see his belongings being, I think, in total 60 pounds, not including his clothes. And all of those things were needed, absolutely needed. It was arrows, a bow, flint and dagger, leather pouch, birch baskets. And birch baskets are fairly light, but still added weight, and plus you need to carry stuff in them. But he absolutely needed these things to even talk about surviving. So now we need to go back to what helped people get to the point of having such sophisticated tools, because as I mentioned, he has a copper axe, and we had to learn how to forge that and sharpen it and all of that, and it was like 99.5% copper, so almost pure copper. But a key thing that is used to just straight up make things better is language. And we see that in many different species. Monkeys, they used hand signs, and I can see in the future that monkeys get very sophisticated hand signs with I forget the gorilla's name, but she could do hand signs to just straight up talk and complete. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, it separates us from other species how sophisticated our language is, but not language. Now, even at Homo erectus, we had a complex series of grunts, about the same as bird whistles. There's many different combinations, but still nothing like actual language. And then I guarantee Neanderthals had some basic language, and we can see that with we have vocal reconstructions. Their vocal cords were much higher up the neck, and they had capabilities of talking. And 50,000 years ago is whenever we started developing actual complex language that differentiated us from birds and things. But I'm sure Neanderthals did. That's just the first absolute evidence. 50,000 years ago is what's suspected. I shouldn't say actual evidence. But we see elephants, giraffes, and foxes, have somewhat language, but as I said, sophisticated language, not really. But they need to have a language to build on things, such as butchering. They had very advanced hunting strategies that built upon what Neanderthals had, and Neanderthals would trap animals in canyons and mountains and whatnot, and basically get to the point where, okay, so the animal can't move, now we can kill it. But we see it getting more advanced, and we see it being easier to get food. And that's very important. Keep that in mind for the rest of the episode. And probably for future episodes. Just a couple of other prehistory episodes. We also see that with language, we can also improve our tools. So we see actual good bows and arrows, some massive death lasers. I'm just kidding. But, bows and arrows with actual good tips that are nice and strong. Flint daggers, axes, like I said, but not for a little bit. We used hand axes, actually, for a couple million, and we see some recent ones as soon as 10,000 years ago, I think. Probably the most important invention ever, the hand axe. So, similar to our ancestors before us, like Neanderthals, we were semi-nomadic, and that means that we only moved whenever it was absolutely necessary, and we see building very primitive shelter. I mean, not even good shelter, honestly. It was just something to sleep in, really. But they wanted to stay near flint deposits, water, but if they had to move for weather or animals, they would just go. And not only do we see them making primitive shelter, we see them expanding on creativity. And we see people saying, well, we should define human by having art and things, which I do not agree with. I think it should be based on owning the Homo Genus, but even that's debated. So anyway, we see art like jewelry, carved materials, I think an ostrich egg was one, and some cave paintings, but I don't know when cave paintings date back to. But with that, we also see music, and that was as recent as 40,000 years ago. I think the first instrument was actually a bone flute, but that bone flute shows that there's probably something before that, because it's surprisingly sophisticated. So I'd say music is way older than that. I don't know when the general concept of a beat was made, like a musical beat, like, but and with the fact that we were rapidly getting better at doing things, not rapidly getting food, we would kill off animals and we would need to go find other animals. So with that, we would move frequently, so with plenty of materials. Honestly, we could, if we learned how to fish, there'd probably be a lot more animals and diversity with animals today. But there's not, because, very primitive still, even though I'm talking about how sophisticated they are. But either way, they expanded to many places. They were all over the earth through a land bridge from Alaska to Russia. I think Alaska to Russia is a very short distance, actually. How far? Yep, Alaska to Russia is only 55 miles, and at one point there was a land bridge there. So that is, I think, 55 miles. Thought it was going to be a bit longer. And I think there's even an island in between there today. But either way, there's a land bridge there very recently, in terms of, all the continents moving and continental shift. But it's kind of crazy that we didn't know there was even humans there in written records until like 1492. And then we thought they were from India. But then we learned, and it's legendary that we were able to do that so quickly. I think 8,000 years ago was probably whenever we were on all the continents. No, sorry, 80,000. 80,000 years ago. Hey, editing me here. I don't know why I said 8,000 or 80,000. It's 20,000 years ago. I don't know where I got 80,000 or 8,000 from. But now they were spread apart, and they were able to survive all these conditions, like the cold, like northern Russia, and then they were able to survive South America and Australia heat, which is legendary. Yeah. Just the fact that 5,000 years ago, the average lifespan was 35 to 40 years old, if you were lucky, and didn't get killed by hunting large game, which you had to do to feed your whole group, which is like 2, 3, 4 families, which, then you were near death at 40, and then you have to carry around 660 pounds of materials, plus heavy clothing, and, now you can just drive 100 miles in like 2 hours or something. I don't know. I don't leave the house. But next episode, we're going to talk about early civilization. And, this was shorter than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be like 30 minutes, but I went across my notes like blazing fast for some reason. Well, anyway, what do you think? What do you think started art? Okay, so when do you think it started? Because I guarantee it did not start 100,000 years ago. I think it started with Australopithecus, but that's something very interesting. Also, when did you think music started? Because I also think that existed since Australopithecus, but less so. Very much less so. Maybe like just beating on a rock with rhythmic value, or lack of rhythmic value, who knows. But anyway, what do you think? What you thinking? If you're on Spotify, rate. If you're on YouTube, like, comment. You don't have to. I'm not your dad. But anyway, bye bye.